The first time my mom told me she wished I'd died instead of my brother, I didn't even cry. I just sat there, staring at her, and let the words sink into my skin like acid. That was 3 months ago. 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, my parents sat me down at our kitchen table in Milwaukee and handed me emancipation papers. They smiled while doing it. Like this was some kind of graduation gift. "You're so independent already, Grace," my dad said, his voice thick with fake pride. "This way, you'll have more freedom to focus on college." I signed the papers with shaking hands. What else was I supposed to do? I didn't have a choice. But yesterday something snapped. I was digging through boxes in the garage, trying to find Christmas decorations, when I found them, 2 garbage bags shoved behind the lawn mower. My chest tightened the second I looked inside. Photos. Hundreds of photos. Every single picture of me with my brother Daniel. Tossed out like trash. Daniel died in a car accident 3 years ago. He was 17. I was supposed to be with him that night, but I was at home with the flu, fever spiking, puking my guts out. Lucky me, right? That's what everyone said back then. But luck doesn't feel lucky when your parents look at you like you stole their real child's chance at life. Daniel was everything. Captain of the football team, top of his class, every teacher's favorite. The golden boy. Me? I was just the weird quiet girl who filled sketchbooks, got panic attacks in hallways, and hid out in the art room. The cruelest part? My parents are mental health professionals. My mom is a therapist. My dad runs grief support groups at the local community center. They get standing ovations for speeches about healing. But when it comes to me, they won't even pay for my therapy. I work 20 hours a week at a bookstore just to afford sessions every other week. They don't even see me as their daughter anymore. Last year, they had a miracle baby through IVF, a fresh start, their second chance at a perfect family. A little boy named Noah. I overheard my mom on the phone with my aunt one night, laughing like a weight had been lifted. It's so much easier now that we only have one child to worry about. It's like we can finally breathe again. One child. Not me. Just Noah. I wanted to scream when I heard that. Instead, I stayed silent. I always stayed silent. Until the night I couldn't anymore. At dinner, I asked my mom why our photos, Daniel's and mine, were in garbage bags. I'll never forget the way her face twisted. She started crying, ugly sobs shaking her shoulders. "I can't look at them anymore," she whispered. "You have his eyes." My dad slammed his hand down on the table so hard the glasses jumped. "Why do you always have to upset your mother, Grace?" 2 weeks later came the family meeting. The dining room table was covered in legal documents. My mom had that same plastered-on smile, the one she used when clients came to the house. "You're so mature, sweetie. We think it's time to make it official." She slid the emancipation papers across the table like they were a birthday card. And there it was. Their clean break. Their perfect narrative. They weren't abandoning me, no, they were supporting my independence. But I saw what else was on that table. A copy of their will. Everything left to Noah. Every single cent. I wasn't even a footnote. The only thing my mom gave me before I left was Daniel's old backpack. "You should have this." I can't look at it anymore. Inside was something that nearly broke me, a birthday card Daniel had written for me before he died. I was 14. He never got the chance to give it to me. My parents had kept it hidden in his drawer for 3 years. It said, "To my favorite person in the world. Can't wait to watch you grow up. Love, your big brother." I sobbed until my throat burned. Because while my parents erased me from every photo, every memory, every part of their lives, Daniel had loved me. And they'd hidden even that. A week later, they pushed me out of the house before Noah's first birthday party. I was a complication, they said. An inconvenience. I thought that was rock bottom. I thought I'd already lost everything. But I was wrong. That wasn't the worst of it, not even close. When I showed up at Aunt Laura's house with my suitcase, she looked at me like I'd just sprouted horns. "I thought you were just coming for the weekend to talk about college applications," she said, frowning at the papers in my shaking hands. I handed her the emancipation documents. Her face shifted from confusion to fury in seconds. "That manipulative bastard," she whispered. "Your father pulled this same stunt when our dad died. Pushed me out of everything, made sure he got control." I just stood there, frozen, hugging Daniel's old backpack like a lifeline. Aunt Laura didn't hesitate. She pointed to her guest room. "That's your room now." End of discussion. By the end of the night, the truth started spilling out like floodwater. My parents had been telling everyone I was troubled ever since Daniel died. That I wanted emancipation. That I was searching for independence. They had been building this lie for months, maybe years. My chest tightened as I sat on Aunt Laura's couch, Mark's card in my lap, reading it again and again just to remind myself someone had loved me once. But the nightmare wasn't done. When I went back to grab the rest of my things, I noticed a stack of papers on the dining room table, a book draft. 400 pages long. My parents' book about grief and healing. I skimmed the draft. My name was mentioned twice. Twice. In a book written by my parents. Daniel filled chapters. Noah was described as their second chance. But me? I was nothing. A ghost they were too polite to acknowledge. Their social media told the same story, every photo was of them, Noah, smiling holidays, birthday cakes. No trace of me. It was like I had never existed. That's when Aunt Laura called her friend Michelle, a social worker. Michelle flipped through the emancipation papers, the photos I'd found, and my parents' book draft. Her eyes hardened. "This isn't emancipation," she said flatly. "This is abandonment. Textbook. They've been planning this." Hearing it out loud made me feel like the floor was disappearing under my feet. But things moved quickly after that. Aunt Laura turned her spare room into my bedroom. She bought me groceries the same day. She didn't treat me like a burden. She treated me like a family. That night, for the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up crying. The peace didn't last long. A week later, my parents showed up at Aunt Laura's door. They were furious. Demanding. My dad's voice thundered through the entryway. "Grace, you need to back us up on this." I froze. Aunt Laura blocked the doorway with her body. "You're not getting near her," she snapped. And that's when my mom lost it. The mask slipped. "Why couldn't it have been you in that car?" she screamed. Right at me. Her voice cracked the air like glass breaking. The neighbors heard. Aunt Laura's whole neighborhood heard. That night, my phone lit up with 47 missed calls from Mom. But it was my dad's single text that froze the blood in my veins. "We know what you told them. Come home now, or we'll make sure everyone knows the truth about the accident." The truth? What truth? I stared at the screen, shaking so hard I dropped the phone. There wasn't a secret. There couldn't be. I had the flu. I stayed home. Daniel went to that party alone. Right? 20 minutes later, Aunt Laura found me sitting on her porch steps, still clutching my phone, my face pale. She sat beside me quietly. "Show me." I handed her the phone. She read Dad's text, her jaw tightening. "Pack a bag. We're going to Grandma's." The 2-hour drive to Grandma's house felt like a lifetime. Aunt Laura made call after call, her voice sharp, furious. I caught pieces of what she said. Threatening a minor, documented abandonment, won't get away with this. Grandma's house smelled like cinnamon rolls and safety. When she opened the door, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me into the tightest hug. "I've been waiting for you to come to me," she whispered. I thought I'd finally reached safe ground. But Grandma wasn't just waiting with open arms. She was waiting with something else, something that would shatter everything I thought I knew. Grandma's kitchen table was covered in papers before I even knew what was happening. She didn't waste time. She pulled out a thick manila folder from her office and dropped it on the wood with a heavy thud. "I've been keeping track since Daniel's funeral," she said. Inside were emails, screenshots, bank statements, photos, an entire archive. My stomach dropped as I flipped through them. The first page was an email from my mom to her sister. "We're considering our options with Grace. She's becoming too difficult. The constant reminder is destroying our marriage." I blinked at the date, 2 years ago. 2 years before the Emancipation Papers. They'd been planning this for 2 years. My chest felt like it was caving in. Grandma flipped to the next set of documents. Bank statements. College funds that were supposed to be split between Daniel and me. All redirected into accounts with only my parents' names. Not mine. Not even Noah's. Just theirs. I wanted to scream, but my voice was trapped somewhere deep in my throat. "But this," Grandma said grimly, sliding one last document across the table. "This is what made me take action." It was a post my dad had written in a private grief support group he ran. "Our daughter has been spreading lies about the night our son died. She claimed she was sick, but the truth is she convinced him to go alone because she didn't want to deal with his friends. The guilt is eating her alive, and now she lashes out at us." The timestamp was from last week. Before they even kicked me out. "They're telling people I made him go alone," I whispered. "They're telling people a lot of things," Grandma said, her voice like steel. "But I've been telling people the truth." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Hannah. "Just heard what your parents are saying while prepping for Noah's party. That you were drunk that night, made Daniel stay home so you wouldn't get caught." What the hell? My heart stopped. Drunk? I was 14. I could barely stand from the fever. My mom had checked my temperature every 2 hours that night. I'd been too sick to even sit up. More texts flooded in from cousins and uncles. Each version worse than the last. That I was supposed to be the designated driver. That I refused to go. That I'd been drinking at home. "They're rewriting the story," I whispered. "Piece by piece. Until I'm the villain." Grandma stood up, her jaw set. "Good. Then we know where to find them." The next morning, she drove us straight to the community center where Noah's birthday party was being set up. The parking lot was packed. Inside, the sound of balloons popping and laughter floated through the air. I walked between Aunt Laura and Grandma, my heart pounding so loud it drowned everything else out. The moment we stepped inside, the room fell silent. Mom's face went pale. Dad's jaw tightened. "Mother, this isn't the time," Dad started. "Sit down, Robert," Grandma said sharply. Her voice carried across the hall like a gavel slamming down. She walked to the center of the room and raised her voice so everyone could hear. "I've been listening to the stories being spread about my granddaughter. About the night my grandson died. And I think it's time everyone heard the truth." My stomach twisted. Because whatever Grandma was about to say, it wasn't just going to expose my parents. It was going to tear this family apart. And I wasn't ready. Not for what was coming next. The air in the community center felt thick, like everyone was holding their breath at once. Mom's mascara was already smudging as she shook her head. Dad's fists clenched at his sides. "I have the proof," Grandma said, pulling out her phone. Grace had the flu that night. I was on the phone with Patricia at 8 o'clock, she told me her fever had spiked to 103. I have the phone records. I have the urgent care discharge papers from the next morning. I have everything. She started reading text messages aloud, Mom's own words from that night. she's still burning up, debating taking her to urgent care. Murmurs rippled through the room. Chairs scraped against the floor. You're lying. Mom's voice cracked. You lied, Grandma shot back. You blamed your 14-year-old daughter for a tragedy that had nothing to do with her. Dad's face turned beet red. She's troubled. She's been acting out for years. She needed therapy, Robert, Grandma snapped. Not abandonment. You're mental health professionals, yet you refuse to help your own child while preaching healing to strangers. Something inside me broke open then. My hand shook as I pulled Daniel's old birthday card from my pocket. To my favorite person in the world, I read aloud, my voice trembling. Can't wait to watch you grow up. Love, your big brother. The room went silent. My mom's sobbing turned guttural. You kept this from me for 3 years, I whispered. The last thing Daniel ever wrote to me. You hid it because you couldn't stand the fact that he loved me. Aunt Michelle, the social worker, stepped forward. Her voice was calm, professional, but sharp enough to cut glass. What I've observed is emotional abuse. Abandonment. And now, defamation. You've been trying to rewrite the past at your daughter's expense. The family erupted into chaos. Some uncles shouted at my parents. Cousins gasped. Baby Noah started crying in his high chair, his tiny fists pounding the tray. Through it all, Grandma stood steady as stone. She pulled a crisp envelope from her purse. I've made my decision, she said. Robert. Patricia. You're excluded from my will. Grace will receive her share. Noah will too, but through a trust managed by Laura. You'll touch nothing. Dad lurched forward, face purple. You can't do this. I already have, Grandma said, calm as ice. My lawyer filed the paperwork yesterday. And if I hear one more lie about Grace, we'll pursue defamation charges. Half the room gasped. The other half sat in stunned silence. I felt my knees weaken, but Aunt Laura gripped my hand. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't erased. The truth was out, ugly and raw, echoing through that decorated hall. Mom's face twisted with rage as she picked up Noah. I hope you're happy, she spat at me. You destroyed this family. I wiped my eyes. No, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You destroyed it the day you decided I was expendable. I just refused to disappear quietly. The words hung in the air like a verdict. They left, storming out with Noah. My heart cracked watching my baby brother disappear with them, but Grandma squeezed my hand. He's not lost to you, she whispered. One day he'll know the truth. And you'll still be here. The room stayed divided. Some relatives followed my parents out, their faces tight with judgment. But others, my cousins Hannah and Jason, Uncle Chris, Aunt Linda, came to me, their eyes soft with apologies. I stood in the wreckage of what used to be my family, Daniel's card still clutched in my hand, and realized something terrifying. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning of a war. The weeks after the party were a blur of chaos and relief. My phone turned into a battlefield, texts from cousins demanding answers, voicemails from relatives who'd once ignored me but suddenly wanted the real story. Some people apologized. Others doubled down on my parents' lies. But the biggest shock came in the form of an envelope. A cease and desist letter from my parents' lawyer. They were accusing Grandma of defaming them by spreading malicious lies about their treatment of me. They wanted her to retract everything and reinstate them in her will. Grandma didn't even blink. She hired her own lawyer, who filed a counterclaim with evidence, the emails, the bank records, Dad's grief group posts, screenshots of their lies about me. They want to play legal games. Grandma said over dinner, her voice steady. Fine. I've been documenting their behavior for years. Let's see how they like their own tactics turned on them. But my parents weren't done. They escalated. They started a blog about parental alienation, painting themselves as victims. They never used my name, but anyone who knew us could connect the dots. Post after post painted me as troubled, unstable, manipulated by bitter relatives. Each word felt like poison. Aunt Laura, Grandma, and Michelle documented every single post. The IP address traced back to Dad's office computer. So while he was running grief support groups, helping other parents heal, he was also posting lies about his own daughter. The breaking point came when they posted about the night Daniel died. They implied I'd been selfish, that I refused to go with him, that my attitude sent him to that party alone. I threw up after reading it. My body shook so hard I couldn't stop. Aunt Laura held me on the bathroom floor while I sobbed. "They want to break you," she whispered. "Don't let them." But the truth has a way of breaking through lies. Grandma called an emergency family meeting. She laid everything out, the timeline, the evidence, even recordings Uncle Chris had secretly made of my parents admitting they needed the inheritance money. Piece by piece, their narrative unraveled. Even some relatives who defended them turned pale. They believed the perfect therapist and grief counselor image. Now they saw the rot underneath. The legal fight dragged on for weeks, but it ended in a conference room. Their lawyer sat across from Grandma's, his face grim as folder after folder of evidence slid across the table, proof of professional misconduct, proof of lies, proof of abuse. By the end, my parents agreed to everything: no more contact with me, deletion of the blog, no challenges to the trust for me or Noah. Mom broke down crying in the room, whispering, "I loved Daniel. I loved you too. I just couldn't look at you without seeing him." But Dad never looked at me once. Not once. 2 weeks later, a package showed up on Aunt Laura's doorstep. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Inside was Daniel's class ring. And a USB drive full of photos. Every picture they'd thrown away: birthdays, Christmas mornings, blurry selfies of us making faces. No note. No apology. Just the photos. I sat on Aunt Laura's floor and clicked through them for hours. Laughing at Daniel's stupid expressions, crying at the candid moments I'd forgotten. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like a piece of him had come back to me. Grandma finalized the trust soon after. My share was locked until I turned 25, enough to cover school and living expenses. Noah's was even tighter, managed by Aunt Laura until he turned 18. When he's old enough to ask questions, Grandma said, "We'll have the answers. The truth will be waiting." I still couldn't see him. The restraining orders made sure of that. But knowing he'd one day read the truth instead of their lies kept me going. Mrs. Chen promoted me to assistant manager at the bookstore. My GED scores came back strong. Scholarships were suddenly a real possibility. At night, I still pulled out Daniel's birthday card. "To my favorite person in the world. Can't wait to watch you grow up." He'd never get to see who I became. But I was determined to become someone he'd be proud of. Not the erased daughter my parents tried to make me. Not the villain in their lies. But a survivor. Someone who refused to disappear quietly. They had thrown me away. But I wasn't trash. And I'd make damn sure they never forgot it.